Hi, welcome to Azure User Group Sweden. Happy Saturday to everybody that's watching us live or recorded today. Hi, Håkan. Good noon to you.
Yes, hi, Jonah. Good noon to you too. How are you?
Yeah. I'm doing great. I'm energized and relaxed after a workout before the live stream, but I'm glad it's a weekend and I'm glad that we're back on our first session after the summer break. How was your summer break like? Was it a recharging one
Yeah, it was.
for you?
It
A
was
good
a
weather, maybe, I
very,
hope?
yeah, it was very good weather and maybe even a little bit too hot, but it was relaxing and recharging. So I'm really looking
How
forward now
warm did you have
to
in Oslo, by the way?
30 degrees.
30 degrees around that. I think we had 30 to some 33
Mm.
warmest I've experienced. But it's good that we have a good summer, and I hope it won't end yet, especially in the northern hemisphere part. But I'm glad to be back, and today we're gonna have a good session about Azure policies. But before we bring our guests to on stage and virtual stage, I would like to introduce my co-leader here, Håkan Silvernagel. He works as an AI specialist and consultant at Sopra Steria. He is also a Microsoft MVP for AI, a Microsoft certified trainer like me, also a community lead. And we are both leaders in helping out together with this community for the past at least 3-4 years at Azure User Group Sweden. And he's also involved in communities such as the .NET User Group in Oslo, the Oslo, AI community in Norway as well. And it's an honor to have Håkan as my co-host and co-organizer in this user group. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to make it alone. So grateful to have you, Håkan.
Yeah, thank you, Jonah. And I'm also very happy to introduce the founder of our user group, Jonah Anderson. She's an Azure MVP. She's a Microsoft certified trainer, and she is an international public speaker. And in addition to that, she is also a podcast host and an author of the Learning Microsoft Azure book on O'Reilly. And she works as a senior Azure consultant at Solidify.
Yes, thank you, Håkan. I hope to those that are new in our user group, feel welcome to learn more about me and Håkan, and you will also learn about our speakers soon. And if you want to watch our previous session, we have it in our YouTube channel or join our meetup. Before we start and introduce our speaker, let me just share our code of conduct. So at Azure User Group Sweden, we are part of Azure Tech Groups and we follow a community code of conduct where we expect everyone to be nice and friendly. If you have some questions or ideas, feel free to share it with respect for others. Be inclusive with all your comments and questions on the live stream or even on the chat. And if you have questions about our code of conduct or if there are feedback that you want us to improve on this and user group, feel free to reach out to me and Håkan on LinkedIn. So yes, and later on, we usually have this routine of virtual fika, the Swedish way, where you can grab any drink that you want, water, coffee, whatever, and spend time with us for 15-20 minutes along with the speaker and Håkan and I, just to engage, network about the topic or just to discuss. And if you have time after the session, join us in a private Zoom call by scanning this QR code later or going to this bit.ly link. All right, let's properly introduce our speaker for today. He is joining us from the Netherlands, and his name is Hans Moons. I hope I pronounced correctly, and Håkan will introduce him.
Yes, let's bring him here on stage first here. So welcome, Hans.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you so much that I can be here.
Yes.
Great to see
So,
you, Hans. Yeah.
so Hans is a software engineer and also a Microsoft certified trainer at the and he focuses on designing, building, and implementing software solutions mainly using Microsoft technology. And he enjoys working on innovative products that help customers address real-world challenges. And in addition to his engineering work, he is also a Microsoft certified trainer where he can share his knowledge and enthusiasm for technology with his colleagues, peers, and customers. We're very happy to have you here, Hans.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Welcome. We've been planning this since we met at the MCT summit in, I think last year. Was it last year? The
January, I think.
Yes, yes, this
That's right.
yes. We're both all of us are like Microsoft certified trainers now representing Netherlands, Sweden, and Norway. And it's amazing to also have not just MVPs or other speaker, but also Microsoft certified trainer. And not just an MCT, but also you are also coder. You're also a developer like
Yeah.
we, like us. That's awesome. So and you're gonna speak about Azure policies. One of the topics that I myself is also, I mean, can, but I'm also learning new things about it. There's a lot of layers to it, and I would definitely Håkan as well. So I look forward to learn from your session. Yes, did you have anything to say before we kind of like bring you on stage
That's a
for
great
your
question.
presentation?
um, no, I don't really think so. I think I'm ready. So,
Okay,
um,
that's
yeah.
good. And as far as we
It's
know, feel free to interrupt, like ask your questions in the chat, and we will interrupt Hans
Yes.
during his presentation. Go ahead, Håkan.
yeah, just remember, Hans, to share your presentation on StreamYard.
Yes, yes. So we can, yeah.
That's a great
Mm.
idea. Let me just quickly share screen and then I'll just get started.
Okay, great.
Mm, So you should see
Uh,
the presentation right now, right?
Okay, there, yes. Oh,
yes,
wait.
there's.
Håkan and I were like double controlling the share. Now it's there. Okay, we'll let you rock the stage, virtual stage. Good luck.
Yes, thank you so much. So welcome everyone who's listening or watching the stream right now. For the next 45 to 50 minutes, we're going to talk about Azure policies and how we can use it to automate our infrastructure. But not only basic automation, but also look forward to automating it beyond the basics. So how can we extend Azure policies to automate even more? So if we take a look at the agenda, we're first going to talk about what problem is Azure Policy actually solving. We will then take a look at how do Azure Policies work and what is it. We will take a look at some basic automations that's built in within Azure Policies. And then we're going to take a look at an experiment I'm actually doing to extend Azure Policies to automate even further than Azure Policies offers basically. But before we dive in, I'll quickly introduce myself. Obviously, Hakan did a great introduction, so thank you, Hakan, for that. But my name is Hans Muns. I'm a software developer and Microsoft certified trainer at Vitas in the Netherlands, which is a consultancy firm. And I got a new hobby since January, and that's actually I'm a dog owner now. So I got a black Labrador, Ollie, which is great fun, but also really time consuming and frustrating at some points. So that's quickly a little bit about me. So let's just dive straight into Azure policies. And the first thing that's really important is what problem is Azure policy actually solving? Is there even a problem to be solved? And to answer that question, I would like to think about you starting to work at a small company, just one development team. You do some stuff in Azure, and it's pretty cool. It works. It's just a small team. The setup is quite consistent because, well, you're just one team, so everything you do is consistent because it's the only thing you do. So there's not really an issue within Azure. It's just consistent. It works. It's great. But you're doing your job really great. They're really good, and the team is growing, and the company is getting bigger, so they get more teams, more speed, and you quickly realize, okay, there is more infrastructure to be managed. There are different teams working on the infrastructure, and you notice some deviation between the infrastructure. And that doesn't have to be a problem, though it might get to a point that it's going to be a problem because it can deliver bugs or inconsistency with compliancy. And we don't want that. But even then, it's still manageable for your organization, and it keeps growing, and even more teams come to play, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's where it really starts going wrong. There's just a lot of infrastructure. Every team is doing things on a different way, and there's just a big chance of error or problems that arise because the infrastructure is just not consistent. And that's actually what Azure Policy is trying to solve. So the point of Azure Policies is basically is to make all infrastructure consistent within a whole landing zone. And to do that, it has different approaches. And to fully comprehend the approaches it offers, we need to understand how it works. So how do Azure Policies actually work? And to answer that question, we're going to take a look at a basic setup. So you're working in the portal or in the CLI, and you're creating some new resource. For our users, it looks like we're sending create request. It gets to Azure, it gets to the resource provider, and it provisions the resource we requested it. That's really cool. That's perfect, and it doesn't really matter which front end we're actually using. But what actually happens is there's the Azure Resource Manager in between. And that Azure Resource Manager is pretty smart. It not only detects, okay, which resource provider should I call to create a resource you want, but it also calls the Azure Policies. And the Azure Policies, they have a way to check your request if it's compliant with the policies that are set. It can also intervene or deny requests, so it never gets created or goes to the resource provider. So in a way, the Azure Resource Manager routes the different requests to the Azure Policies to check if it's compliant. If so, it goes to the resource provider. If not, it will just block it or do whatever the policy tells it to do. So there happens more when you send a request than just it goes to Azure and it creates the resource. So if we summarize Azure Policies on a high level, it's basically a way to enforce certain requirements to resources. We got a possibility to assign it on different scopes, and we go through that in a moment. And Azure Policies basically consists of three building blocks, and that are definitions, assignments, and initiatives. And to fully comprehend it, what is an Azure Policy definition? Well, an Azure Policy definition is actually just a JSON format file that contains some rules, and if those rules are met, a certain effect that happens. So it could deny requests, it could alter requests, and we'll just take a look in the portal in a second. We also have assignments, and assignment is nothing more than saying, okay, this policy has to be assigned on a certain scope. And what's really cool about it, you can also assign parameters to that scope. So we can have a policy definition that requires a certain tag with a parameter name for the tag. So we can decide on the assignment what tag it should have. And that's really easy or really handy because we can then set a certain definition, use it on different scopes with different parameters. So it works different on each scope, but we don't have to create separate definitions for it. So that's really handy. We also got an initiative, and an initiative is nothing else than just a group of policy definitions that can be assigned in at once. Often we see it for compliance standards like ISO or any other GDPR, those kind of compliancy things. Microsoft actually recommends always using initiatives when you're building your own definitions. And that's mostly for extensibility purposes. So if we got a initiative with a definition and we assign it, we can then just add a definition to that initiative, and it automatically gets deployed to all those scopes that also have an assignment for that initiative, instead of if we have to go one by one changing it. So let's just take a quick look at the Azure portal. So within the Azure portal, we can actually navigate to policies, and I'll just zoom in. If it's not readable, please tell me. And within the Azure policies in the portal, we can actually look at the definitions. And what's really cool is that Microsoft actually has a lot of built-in policies. So you see a type built in, and there's just a lot. I think for most things you want to do, there's actually already a definition, but we can create our own. So I actually created an initiative, the above one, the require environment tag. So if you take a look at that one, we'll actually see that initiative is a group and it should contain 2 definitions. It's blurred out because I'm using some kind of extension to blur IDs. So I will just click on one. So let's say the bottom one. And here we are at a policy definition with a require a tag on a resource. And this is actually the definition. So this is the JSON schema with some properties, some standard metadata. We can define a parameter. I'll just try zoom in if possible. So tag name, and then we got a rule. So if a tag with a tag name does not exist, exists false, then we alter the effect, and that's deny. In this case, it will mean if there's no tag with the specified name in the parameter, we will just deny the request, so you can't create a resource. But there are different effects, and we'll go through that in a second. But as you can see, it's just a pretty basic JSON file. And let me zoom out. And actually, the same goes for the initiative and also the assignment. So the initiative also is just a JSON file which consists of a list of policy definitions with a certain ID. Also, I specified the value of the parameter here, but you could also specify parameters at the initiative level and do it at the assignment. So here we're saying, okay, we require an environment tag, and same goes for the other policy. And we can then just assign it. So if I go back to the policies and go to the assignments, we'll actually see one assignment in this landing zone. That's require environment tag. And this is scoped at the Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. So everything inside the subscription has to comply with this initiative. We can actually assign this on multiple scopes or different scopes. So we can assign it on management group level. We can assign it on subscription level. But we can also assign it at a resource group level if we really need that fine-grained control over our infrastructure. So really cool. Hopefully not too difficult. But we know the building blocks, but how can we actually automate stuff with it? So if I go back to the presentation, how can we actually automate things? So we got some policies, we set some rules. Maybe we set a rule to block public access to the internet or something. We want to automate remediation for it. We want to maybe deny it or automatically fix it. So how can we do that? And if we take a look back to the definition, we saw we can set some rules and an effect. And there are actually different kind of effects to act when a certain rule is met. And I'm just going to show the 5 most used as far as I know, but there are way more. So the first one is the deny effect. And that one is pretty straightforward. It will just deny your whole request. So if a certain rule matches, it will just deny the request. So you can't deploy it. You'll get an error message in the portal or in the CLI or wherever you're deploying from. We can set audit. And audit actually allows the deployment, but it will audit it as non-compliant. So we can see in the portal which resources are non-compliant to certain policies, and we can act upon that. So let's say we got a policy and we want to know if it's non-compliant, but it's okay if it's get deployed because we don't want to interrupt the workflow. We can set audit. It's also mainly used when you're introducing policies and you don't want to deny everything at once. You first want to monitor how much is deniable or what is not compliant. So you start off setting audit. You can see what's non-compliant. You can fix it and then set the deny rule to enforce it. We also have append, and append alters the request you're sending. We go into that in a second. You also got modify, and modify and append kind of work a bit similar. There are differences, but they modify also modifies the request you're sending. And we got the deploy if not exists, or in short, DINE, which actually starts a whole ARM deployment. So you can specify a whole template to deploy if certain conditions are met. We'll go through these in a second. So first, append and modify. I like to explain it using a simple cartoon, and that's you're going to the office in your t-shirt and your jeans, and the append policy says, well, you also need to wear this tie. So you add the tie and you're compliant. So in a way, the policy can add the tie to, well, what you're wearing. The modify, on the other hand, can change everything. So you can still come in with your t-shirt and your jeans, but you have to wear a whole suit. So you have to change everything. If you take a look at when should you use which which is a good question. The append is mostly used to add resources that are not specified. A common example is adding allowed IPs for a storage account, for example. And the modify is mostly used to add more detailed levels or more complex properties. Think about enabling soft delete on the storage account, or updating tags, those kind of stuff. So how does that look at the code? When we have the definition, we had that rule, and if that rule is met, we had that block with then. So if we take a look at it, we then have an effect append, and we specify the details what it should append. So in this case, we actually add a IP to the IP rules with the IP of 40, 40, 40, 40, and we allow it. So when a request comes in, it matches the rule that is not specified on this slide, but is there somewhere. It will add this IP to the IP rules so that the IP is always allowed, which is nice if you got like a VPN or something to get to your infrastructure and you always want it to be available. If you take a look at modify, it looks kind of similar, but though there are some differences. So we specify the effect modify again. The operation, we said operation of add or replace, which adds or replace whatever we specify, in this case a tag with a tag environment, and we assign the value test to that tag. And what this will do is it will add a tag if it's not existing, or if it exists, it will just alter the value. What's interesting is we got a role definition IDs here, and that is needed because when you modify something, it can also run when updating resources, so it should have the corresponding roles to be allowed to do that. And a append doesn't have that. So append is only at the creation. So you create a resource. The request is altered by Azure policy, but it's done by the user identity. So if the user has the rights, it's fine, you can do it. But with modify, it's actually used by managed identity. So it's a separate identity that alters it. So it needs the right permissions. If we take a look further under the hood, we'll actually see that the user sends a request, put or patch or whatever to deploy a resource or to update a resource. It then gets to the policy, which evaluates the payload. It takes the effects that are defined, or it then checks, is it compliant now with the policy? If not, it will just fail because it just can't get compliant. But suspect it gets compliant when it takes the rules. It will actually send the request to the resource provider. It will provision the resources and goes back to the user that the resources are created. So that's pretty straightforward. What's less straightforward is the next one, which is the deploy if not exist. The deploy if not exist actually deploys a whole Azure Resource Manager template. And I will go through it a bit later, but the issue I'm finding is that it's asynchronous. So you're deploying resources. You got a rule that checks are certain things existing. If not, it will just run a full deployment. But it will run the full deployment after your first request. So your first request goes through, and we'll see that in a second. But after the provisioning of that resource, which is non-compliant, it will run the second deployment. So if you go back to the office cartoon, it's actually someone in a t-shirt and some jeans. And the policy thinks, where's your tie? And it just waits till he gets back and the tie gets added. It's asynchronous. So this is actually a bit bigger. So I'm not sure if this is readable. I probably think not. But this is also just the 10 part of the Azure policy. And what we see here is an existence condition. So we've got the existence condition here, which in this case checks for a data encryption status of enabled. If this does not exist, we will execute the deployment below, which is just a full Azure Resource Management, Azure Resource Manager template. And we'll actually deploy incremental deployment where we get to the database and actually enable the data encryption. So there's that. If we take a look one step further in how does it work behind the scenes, we actually see again a request goes from the user to the policy. The policy then evaluates it. It sees that it has to do something for the existence condition, but it doesn't do it right away. So it sends a request to the resource provider, which provisions the resources and give it back to the user. And then when it's created, the policy will actually send a request back to the resource provider to get the resource configuration. So what is deployed now? It will get the information back, the policy, and it will then evaluate, okay, does it exist what I expect that should be existing? If it exists, it's fine. There's nothing to do anymore. So the policy will just stop. It will just not do anything because it's compliant. If it does not exist, it will actually kick off the deployment, send that deployment to the resource provider. Resource provider will deploy it. After the deployment, the policy will then again do a request to the resource provider and check if it now exists. If not, it will mark it as non-compliant. And if it does exist, it is compliant and everything is finished and we're really happy because it's green. So it's a bit more asynchronous. So we can actually deploy resources that are non-compliant and fix it later, but you're not sure if the template fixes it. I mean, it should if you build it correctly, but it could be that it's not. So I would actually not recommend this when you're implementing some security checks like disabling public access and those kind of stuff, because you can just deploy public access and it will fix it asynchronous, which would mean that it's public accessible for a while. So these effects and definitions are actually run at the moment that a user does something or alters something. It's good to also tell it also runs every 24 hours. Azure Policies just checks if everything is still compliant and updates if needed. Though nothing should come out of there because every time something gets altered, it goes through the policies. So it should always be correct what the portal is telling, but it still runs every 24 hours. So what if we got an existing environment, but we want to introduce Azure Policies and there are non-compliant resources? How can we make them compliant without changing everything manually in our infrastructure as code? Well, they actually got something that's called a remediation task, which actually makes non-compliant resources compliant. And it's basically just the modify or the deploy if not exist policies you can use. And it runs on a managed identity. So again, it needs the right permissions or role assignments on the scope you want it to do what it needs to do. But you can just manually run it from the portal to make things compliant, which is pretty cool. So you can make existing environments compliant. Yeah, there's that. So as I maybe slightly let know, is that I'm not a big fan of some of the automations. So is there an issue with available automations? And to fully compare it, I also have to tell what I like about it. So I got some benefits and some downsides of the built-in automation that it offers. Some of the benefits, it's easy to use. I mean, Azure manages it. It's just a small JSON file and it works. It's great. It's reliable. Once again, Azure manages it. We don't have to do anything, only provide it with the JSON schema. It's great. I actually like it for small adjustments, like setting tags or something. And it's also just really fast, so that's great. But there are some downsides, because mostly when you're using policies, you're usually a bigger organization, and you've got multiple teams, and probably one team is managing the policy, some central IT team or something. And that's great, and I think that's the correct way to do it. But the downside is that the other teams, it can be quite opaque for them, because they're deploying through infrastructure as code, or at least I hope they do. They deploy a resource, and some kind of magic for them happens in the cloud. It changes things. They don't really see what it changes and why it changes. So it can feel quite opaque for them. It also has some limited possibilities, in my opinion, even though you can do a full template deployment, which is great. I mean, it offers a lot. It's still limited to deploying new resources or altering the request. But you can't do anything besides that. There's no way you can do like custom workflows or anything. And I think one of the biggest points I don't like is that it doesn't fully block non-compliant resources. The deny does, the append and modify does, but the deploy if not exist, the most capable, the most powerful one, where you can do a whole template deployment, doesn't block the non-compliant resource. It will asynchronous try to fix it with a template deployment. And I think that's an issue. I think some people might not know that it's asynchronous. And it can actually be a threat for your security. And the last downside I actually felt is, and this is a bit the same as feeling quite opaque, it's you're fixing things in the cloud, not in your code. So development teams have infrastructure as code, which is for them the single source of truth of their infrastructure. But in the landing zone where we got policies defined, we're actually altering and fixing it, which is opaque for them. But also it can have some issues, because we can deploy to the landing zone with policies and everything works fine. But for some reason, we want to deploy to a different landing zone which doesn't have the policies, and things don't work, and we don't understand why. So it's not, the infrastructure as code is not a single source of truth anymore. So that I think that's a really big downside of this automation. I actually thought about this and thought, well, maybe can I make it better? Can I do it different? Is there a way to make the downsides less? And that's actually how I started a small experiment what I want to go through with you all. And I actually set a goal for this. And the goal was, I want to fix a policy violation or policy issue, so something that's non-compliant, in the source code automatically within a GitHub repository, because I had to choose a repository. So what I want to do is I want to deploy a resource. I want a policy definition to deny my request because it's non-compliant. And I want them to automatically fix it without me interfering with it. So I just want it to automatically get fixed. So I started searching, like, okay, how can I do this? Is there a way to get notified or something? Is there anything to start the workflow, to start doing this? And that's where I actually discovered Azure Events. And that's really powerful, and I'm still exploring a lot of possibilities with it. But what it basically is an Azure Events is a way to create event grid system topics. And for people that don't know what event grid is, it's basically a kind of messaging broker that just gets events and sends them out, or you can listen to the events and do things with it. And Azure actually offers quite a lot, and actually writes a lot of events to such topics if you configure them. So you can just configure them in the portal, and it exists, and you can connect with your own code to it, which is awesome. And I actually noticed that the Azure subscription scope, where I also assigned my policies, actually gave events at the moment that a policy denies my request. So if you take a look how that looks, is we create or update a resource. In my case, it was through a pipeline, but it can also be the portal or the CLI or anything. It gets sent to the policy denies it. I get an error back that it is denied. And at that time, at the same time, the system topic gets an event called, in this case, the Microsoft Resources resource write failure event, which actually notifies us, hey, you tried to writing it to a resource, but it went wrong. So really cool, because now we get a access point to start our workflow. And I went and checked, okay, what's in that event? What can I do with that event? And if we take a look at the content of that event, it's not really much. So we're currently seeing one of an event. It's a different event. It's actually the resource write success event, but it's the same properties for the failure event. And the only interesting things is the status, which in this case is succeeded in this example, but when it gets denied, it's failed. We get a subscription ID and we get a correlation ID. And the rest is just some information about authorization, time, types, those kind of stuff. So it was not a lot of information. I thought, okay, well, if I get notified, but how do I know what policies are violated? How do I know what code was deployed? I just missed a lot of context to actually automate stuff. So I continued searching, obviously, and that's where I went and checked the activity log. And to my surprise, the correlation ID that is sent to the event grid system topic actually correlates with the correlation ID in the activity log. And the activity log is great because the activity log contains the policy definition IDs that are violated with that request. So we then get the policy definition IDs, and we can actually query Azure to get the exact policy definitions. So we can see, okay, this policy definition said it's non-compliant. So we can actually see what's going wrong. So to summarize it, we create an event, we get an event from Azure when a policy denies our request. We then can query the activity log by correlation ID to get more information, like the policy definition ID. And then we can actually query Azure to get relevant policy definitions, including its initiative and assignments. So we can also get the parameters to fully comprehend what it's trying to check. So I then had all the data I thought I needed. And then I was, okay, how can I fix this? Because sometimes maybe we check for a tag that's non-existing. Other times I need to add an IP that's not in the allowed list. How can I determine what to do without writing a lot of code to actually comprehend all those scenarios? And a lot of presentations go about it, so I also used it. AI maybe was a great idea for this because the input is really dynamic. It's really hard to code against it to comprehend and actually support all scenarios. So I thought, well, maybe AI is the way to fix this. So I went and checked AI out, and Azure actually has something called the Azure AI Foundry. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with the Azure AI Foundry, but for those who aren't, the AI Foundry is basically Microsoft's solution to deploy and manage LLM models. And to actually use those models, I thought, well, agentic AI is cool. Let's try it out. Let's learn about agentic AI. So I actually started using the semantic kernel agents, which is a way to add AI agents within your source code. And for those agents, I actually used handoff orchestration. There are different ways agents can communicate with each other. And one of the ways is the handoff orchestration. And to explain that, this is the diagram Microsoft actually offers about the orchestration. And what the handoff orchestration basically is, we got some input that goes to an agent, and that agent thinks. It analyzes the input and thinks, okay, should I complete it? Am I done with the task that's assigned to me? Do I hand it off to the agent, to other agent? Or do I need more human input? And all those agents can think, okay, what should I do? Should I go to the other agent? Should I complete it? Should I go to the human for more input? So I thought that's really cool. the only issue I had is that I don't want to give input to the agents. I just want to give them a task and let them do it. So I actually coded a way that when they ask for human input, I'll just return, just do whatever you think. And it works surprisingly well. I'll just show it in the code in a sec. And this way, the agents just think. And I actually specified 3 agents: 1 agent to actually write the fix, 1 to review the fix, and 1 to summarize the fix. So we get some decent input. So when we put it all together, it actually gets a bit bigger. So we still have on the left the user that creates a resource. It then gets denied by the policy. We get an event written to the system topic event. I then wrote a Azure function that consumes that event. It then gets the relevant logs, so we know the additional information that is needed. We also get the policy definitions. And then with all that data, we just hand it off to the agents and say, hey, I'm deploying a resource from this repository. It's failing because of these policies. Please fix it and create a PR for me. And what happens then, the agents just go to work. It's magic. Yeah, it's not really magic, but it feels like magic. Because what it does, it actually scans my code. I actually gave it access to the source code through tooling. I'll just show it in the Visual Studio in a second. It will scan my code. It will try and fix it. It will create a PR. It will explain it, and it's awesome. So I think I've done enough talking. So just let me quickly show how it works. So in here, I have a repository, in this case, policy demo invalid because it's an invalid infrastructure. And in here, we have some infrastructure, which is just one bicep file. And this bicep file deploys a user-assigned identity with a name and a location. It's not that interesting. It's just a really small resource. But in my landing zone, I actually got an assignment that requires an environment tag. And this environment tag is not set on this user-assigned identity. So it should fail because I'm missing the tag. So let's just run the deployment. And as you can see, I actually tried it multiple times. So while it's running, it actually will probably fail in a second. So I'll refresh the page to see it's running. And this request will fail because of the policy. What then happens is the event is sent to the system topic, and it gets consumed by my Azure function that then tries to fix it. I didn't mention it, but I also connected a Slack channel to it, so we can see a little bit what it's doing. So in here, we got a policy alert channel, and we should see some messages coming in. So here we have something went wrong while deploying resource, starting investigation. So it's now trying to get the data from the activity log, which might take several minutes because the log is lagging behind. So there's a retry mechanism, so it can take a couple of minutes. But it actually got the event and it's working now. So we also see the deployment failed. And what will happen is when it gets the data, it will actually query the definitions and all those kind of informations, and then try to create that PR. And I need to specify this is an experiment, so it might fail. I'm really curious. It might also create multiple PRs. I also saw that. I need to fix it, but but it's pretty cool. So I hope it runs pretty fast. So while this is running, maybe we can just check out the code. So here I have a solution with an Azure function policy extender. I didn't know a better name, so I just went with it. And in this function, we actually got a program.cs that obviously sets the default services. We then got some.
And I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm interrupting. Can you
No, it's
zoom?
fine.
Yeah, can you zoom the code? Yes, great.
Is this
Thanks,
better?
thanks. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So here we got some default services, and we got here the consume policy event. And this is our Azure function. So it gets the event from the event grid trigger. It will then parse the data. It's not the most beautiful code, I'm sorry in advance. It will then query some data, check if we need to do anything, and it will hand it off to analysis service. And this analysis service actually uses our AI Foundry project with a GPT 4.1 deployment. And here it will actually start the analysis. So here we're building a kernel. We actually add some plugin, and the plugin is actually a way to allow the AI agent to execute functions when it's running, when it thinks it needs to execute them. So in the code plugin, we got things specified to create a PR, to scan the files in the repository, those kind of stuff. We then specify our agents. So here we've got a code agent, a review agent with the instructions and descriptions, and also a summarize agent to summarize it all. And we then create the orchestration, the handoff orchestration. So we say we always start with the code agent that's going to analyze it and try to fix it. The code agent can hand it off to the review agent. The review agent can then hand it off back to the code agent when things need to get fixed, or hand it off to the summarize agent. And they can all, you don't have to specify, but they can all end it when they think it's done, when it's good. So we then create the orchestration. And this orchestration has a response callback that I use for logging, so I can see what it's actually doing. And it has an interactive callback which asks for user input. And this is the hack I told I talked earlier about. And I'll just return a chat message content with do whatever you think is needed to perform your task, because I just don't want get involved in this. I just want this to run automatic. Maybe I should use a different orchestration. I'm still experimenting with it. This is all also a preview. So you see a lot of warnings disabled. That's because it's actually in preview, this functionality. So then we start the runtime. We actually summarize all the data we have, and we actually invoke the orchestration, which will then start the agent thinking and doing whatever they think is needed. So that's the code in really quickly. So if I go back to Slack, we'll see it sent a lot of messages. It found the activity log. It found the corresponding policies. I formatted it a bit nicer. So it says, okay, this policy is violated. This is the rule. These are the parameters that are given. And then it's handed off to the agent, which is then fetching files from the repository. It actually found the main bicep file. It started more. Here are the analysis results. This is the history of the communication between the agents, and somehow it's not outputting. I don't really know why. I still have to check that out. I'm sorry. But it did a lot. So if we go back to the repository and we go to the pull requests, we actually see there's another pull request right now. So this one was a month ago. And it actually created this pull request fully automatic without me doing anything. So it added some description. This is blurred because of my extension. Let me quickly turn it off. So here we got it shows compliance with policy definition and the idea of policy definition. And if you take a look at the changes it did, we'll actually see it added an environment tag, demo tags, environment tag. Is this the best way to fix it? I don't know. I guess it depends, but it actually fixed it. And if we run this, it should actually succeed. So that's really, really cool. So yeah, we actually had a deployment that failed because a policy denied it. We then used AI and an Azure function to get relevant data and fix the issue, which then create the pull request to fix it automatically. And the development team can just check the pull request, check the description, what is added and why, and this works. It's really cool, or at least I find it really cool. So I actually gave this talk, I think, like a month ago, somewhere in the Netherlands on a meetup, and there were some really interesting ideas because I also showed this. But it's a good question if this is the best way to do it, because right now I'm just building some kind of GitHub Copilot instead of just using GitHub Copilot. So someone came with the idea to actually not fix the code itself, but actually let the AI write a really detailed issue in GitHub. and then let the issue assigning, or then assign the issue to GitHub Copilot to actually fix it. I haven't tried it out yet, but I think that should work better because I'm not as good as a whole team of GitHub developers. So I suspect they can. I suspect GitHub Copilot can actually fix it better than I can. But I definitely think that the agents and the extensibility that system topics offer can really benefit in helping development teams to fix their non-compliant resources and makes it feel less like magic. So let's go back to the PowerPoint real quick. And I'll see it's almost time, so I'll just wrap it up. So to quickly recap, we talked about Azure Policies. We talked about what's the problem it's trying to solve, which is inconsistencies in your large infrastructure. We talked about definitions, initiatives, and assignments, which are the core components of Azure Policies. We talked about different policy effects. We talked about the 5 most common, though there are more. So if you go to Microsoft Learn, there's like a list of, I think, 15 to 20 different effects, which is really cool. But we talked about audit, append, modify, deploy if not exist, and deny. I'm not really sure if I said it correctly. But anyway, we talked about different policies. We then take a look at how we can extend Azure Policies. So we can use deny to deny a request, but we can actually hook into that with a event create system topic. So the eventing from Azure, which then gets handed off to a Azure function that gets relevant data and then hands it off to the semantic kernel agents. And those agents actually created an automatic PR, which fixes, in this case, a simple violation, which is a missing tag. But it can also try and fix different things or more complex things. So that's it for me. If you got any questions or if you just want the slides or just want to stay connected, please scan the QR code. It will go through my LinkedIn page. Just send me a message. It's always nice to connect with fellow IT professionals. And I also want to thank Hakan and Jonah for the invite. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hans. It was really, really interesting.
Yes, it is a great session. Impressive. I learned a lot. Like I was just like writing all my like question in between. Like I like that you kind of like put it in both the infrastructure perspective. I like that you did have the demo on the Azure portal, and I mean I had a question, and then you actually like in the on the go to to answer it during a presentation. But I am very interested to check out your Azure Policy Extender. Is it like a personal project that you did yourself, or is something that you use at work with your team?
I wished it was added on work, but it
Okay.
isn't. This is just a personal experiment. I just wanted to check
Oh,
out, okay, can I extend it? Especially with the AI now, that's getting pretty good. And I also just wanted to learn more about AI and extending, and a whole new world opens up when you do so. So it's
yes. I'm
great. It's really
curious
fun.
to see your repo if you are able to share or do a. I'm curious how you have built the logic for it with the Azure
Definitely,
functions. I assume that you use the standard functions, not the durable one, or you mentioned
it's a
about
standard function.
orchestration.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
standard function. There are
Okay.
some issues, obviously, with some time that it can take for the agents to actually solve it. So maybe a durable function is better at the end, but to quickly experiment with it, I just deploy the standard function.
Okay.
So it's a good
Yes.
one. I should definitely check that one out.
I
Yeah.
like it, and I'm curious, which led me to. We don't have any question from the audience. I think they're very quiet, just like maybe amazed by your presentation. But I have a question about related to infrastructure as code because I did you did mention a challenge about infrastructure and relevance to Azure policies. I mean, the code demo that you have, I think it's kind of like more focused onto like developers, I assume, to know if it's breaking the rules on this Azure policies. But do you find any like you did mention any gaps, but in terms of infrastructure as code, what's your like perspective or best practice that you can just like shortly share to our audience today if they work with Azure policies and infra code?
It's a great question.
Yes, maybe not
um,
clear, yeah, but yeah.
yeah, no, I think it's a great question.
Mm,
Yeah, it really depends on the scenario. Like, there are some businesses with a lot of development teams, and when you're doing infrastructure as code, which you should, because there are really benefits of doing so. Um, I think it's good if there's like a central hub with just templating for your infrastructure as code that you can just use as development team. And if you make that central hub or templates part of the team that also manages the Azure policies, I think it's way easier to stay compliant with your infrastructure as code as is. Um,
okay. Mm,
yeah, so it really depends on the scenario. But I think if you're a smaller company with just one team or two teams, I don't really see the added benefit, because the team that's managing the policies is also the team that's deploying and having issues, so it knows about the policies.
yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And also it depends. Usually when you deploy it through to Azure and Infra Code, if there's like Azure policies blocking it, it usually doesn't work. I mean, doesn't deploy, right? It's like the top of like the source of truth, like it's blocking it. So
Yeah,
it's very interesting because I work with Infra Code and policies is also very important. I have a
exactly.
question. Probably I will ask more, but I'll pause and ask Håkan. Maybe he has something on his mind.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting the things that you did with semantic kernel and the orchestration part and all of that. But I'm also wondering if that will not that be handled in the end by GitHub Copilot.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I was just saying that I was very impressed by what you did with the semantic kernel and the orchestration and checking in and checking out code and checking what was the issue and so on. But don't you think that will be eventually handled by GitHub Copilot to have that type of
I
functionality?
think I think for part, yes, because GitHub Copilot is evolving really quickly, and you can assign GitHub issues to GitHub Copilot, and it will just try to solve those issues. What I don't think will be added to GitHub Copilot is the connection between a policy violation and actually trying to fix the code. So I think that's the added benefit here. I think that instead of trying to fix the code with my agents, it's maybe better to actually write a really detailed issue on GitHub about the policy violation and what is violating, and then assign that issue to GitHub Copilot to actually fix it. Because GitHub Copilot is, I'm 100% sure GitHub Copilot is better at fixing the code than my solution is.
Mhm.
So I think for a part, yes, GitHub Copilot will replace it.
Okay. Did it answer your question, Håkan? Satisfied?
Yes.
I have last question. I know we're out of time, but I want
That's
to
fine.
ask it while we're live because I think it's also relevant instead of taking it offline and another separate call later. Uh, um, there is a new policy now coming, trending. You see it everywhere. The European AI Act, and
Yes.
I'm in the midst of like learning more about it at the same time, thinking about how it can be like implemented in like Azure, for example. So when it comes to European AI Act and any policies or governance GDPR, is there like do you know anything, any resource that you can share to us or to the audience about using Azure policies in relevance for that? Because I know you did show the policy list at the
Yeah.
beginning. Do you know if there's anything an Azure policy list that already supports this, like European AI Act or this compliance requirement?
That's a good question. And to be fully honest, I don't know.
Okay, not yet.
um,
Yeah, I will get back to that, but it's something I thought maybe you have an answer, but we can take a look at that together. I see Håkan is offline right now. But you heard of it, right? European AI Act.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I still need to learn more about it.
Okay.
And I think Azure will probably just publish a built-in initiative with all the policy definitions to comply with it. I'm not
Mm.
sure if it already is there, but I think it will be there. And
Yes.
otherwise, you can just create your own, obviously. But I don't know enough about AI Act to actually
Yes, it's
give
new
any good
actually
advice.
for
Uh,
me and for everybody. But if it's something like a policy, just like GDPR, it's also something you think about when it comes to like building infrastructure and building your code, right? Like data and everything. And also, if you have your applications integrated with AI tools or models that are open, for example. But it's interesting. Something maybe we can park and discuss later on.
that's good.
Håkan seems to be having a technical issue right now, so he's not showing on the live stream. But we're about to end soon and continue in our Zoom meeting. If he doesn't show up, I will finalize our session anyway to respect the time of others that are watching us and also you, Hans. But is there anything you want to add or share to our audience, upcoming events, upcoming initiatives that you have before we finalize or end the session?
Um, Not really. I do have some other events upcoming. So later this month, I'm actually in Switzerland for a talk about B unit. So that's a whole different topic. I also got something in October, but it's not public yet, so I won't tell more about it. So there are
Okay.
some things coming, so that's really cool. For the rest, no, I just really want to thank anyone that's watching or listening for your time. It was great to be here. So also thank you, Jonah and Hakan, if Hakan is listening now.
Yeah, I think he's somewhere
This was
in
great.
the background. He just said, "Go end the show." Without him. Yes, yeah, that's good. Thank you so much for finally sharing. I know we've talked about this offline to for you to share in our user group. So finally, you found this the right session and really like it. I think I'm gonna rewatch the session and reshare it later on to our community. But thank you so much for devoting your time and sharing your knowledge, and also thanks to our like audience watching us live or later when it is recorded or replayed. But I appreciate it. Before I end the stream, I want to share that our next upcoming session is also a bit about AI, not about Azure policies this time, but we're gonna be joined by by Omer. I hope I pronounce his name, and he will be sharing about performing LLM orchestration and chat using Azure SQL, using Azure OpenAI, which is a very interesting topic, which probably you, Hans, can share or learn also next stream, this time as an audience, right?
Definitely, yeah, I'll be
Yeah,
watching. That's
yes. Yeah,
great.
that's great. Thank you so much, Hans, and everybody. And I wish everyone a happy weekend. And by the way, don't forget if you want to like continue the conversation, chat with Hans, me, and Håkan, ask more questions about it. Feel free to like scan this QR code or join using our Bitly link on the Zoom meeting, which we will start right after we end the stream. Otherwise, happy weekend from me, Håkan, and Hans, and from your dog also, Hans. I look
Yeah,
forward to seeing
yeah.
how much he grow.
Too
Yes.
much.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.